Good morning, everyone. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a very hot topic right now. And the reason it is because of the fact that African American, black people, brown people are able to speak out without any type of retaliation with their jobs, friends, and other people that are not black. They're able to speak their honest to God opinion about things that are happening and things that has happened in the past to them on their jobs, in their daily lives, or whatever, or even in their interracial relationships. Oftentimes these things happen, but nobody would ever say anything because of the no one would ever say anything because of the fact that they were afraid of what the public would say, the world would say, the job would say, or even get fired on the job just for speaking out on the truth. I'm going to start back with things that I experienced being black from the time that I could remember as a baby or a toddler. Um, and even before that, the things that I heard from my parents, which my father's father, he was 104 when he died, when he passed on. And my dad would tell us all the stories about how he picked cotton and the land, the slave master left some land that we'd owned. And it was passed because of the fact that I guess the slave master felt that my grandfather deserved the land. So my dad, it was 17 children, and he helped his dad pick cotton and to take care of the 17 children. But prior to that, his father um, worked on the land, and so the land was left to my father's father, and then to my father, which was later sold. And then my father packed up and moved all of his kids to the city to better our lives as well as his. So he moved us to the city, and it was eight of us, and I'm the seventh sibling. So, what I could remember from that point after my dad moved us to the city to better our lives is that he had a very high expectation of what he wanted for his kids and himself and for our lives to be, to better us from where his father and his father's father came from through slavery and working and picking cotton and getting paid nothing hardly to survive. So when he did move us to the city, his desire was to not move his kids into the projects. Uh, he had his own business, such as doing anything that there was to do, cutting yards, cleaning houses, cleaning buildings, or anything just to make money and make ends meet. So my dad was always an entrepreneur, uneducated because he didn't get to go to school because of the fact, remember, he had 17 sisters and brothers and he was the youngest, so he had to help his dad pick cotton to take care of the rest of the family. Now, when he moved to the city, he learned his own, business. He learned to do his own business so that he wouldn't have to answer to anyone, and uneducated, but he had a lot of common sense, which gave him the knowledge and how to pursue his own businesses. And he was a jack of all trades, not just one thing, but he did many things. So he decided to move us into a house. He never wanted the projects. He never wanted apartments. He wanted us to have a front yard and backyard. And so the first house that he moved us to, I didn't quite remember. I didn't quite remember where I was born. I was told where I was born, but that house was a rent house because when he first moved to the city, he couldn't afford to buy a house. So, but he still had the common sense not to put us into projects or, an apartment because he had so many kids and he wanted us to have room to play in the yard if we wanted to go outside because he was a very particular person and he didn't want us running around up and down the streets in and out of other people's houses and having people run in and out of ours. Very protective of his five girls and three boys. So My mother was always there, but she was always like in the background. She was more the quiet one. She didn't have to work, just watch her kids. So the reason I say my father often times you may hear me say that is because he was the breadwinner, of the family. And so my mom would do the cooking, the cleaning, and watching the kids while he went out to do the work. And I know that was very stressful and hard on him because he had to do it all for everybody, including him and my mom. Okay, so then I remember that house, and it was a rent house, but because he had so much common sense, he way back then when black people, were not even thinking about buying property, they were just renting and, doing what they could or what they knew to do. And my dad, later we stayed in that house. I was 3 years old. This is when I started to remember things. And he moved us from that particular house and moved us to a bigger house that he purchased. He finally was able to save up money to purchase his very own home. And I was 3 years old, and I remember, and we was so happy. We had a big tree in the front yard, and we had a big backyard. I mean, he needed a yard because my dad had a lot of trucks. He had trucks for everything. He had a dump truck. He had a pickup truck. He had just a regular truck. He had a moving van truck. Then, of course, he had his car. he had, I mean, my dad worked so hard. He had all of this stuff, just one man with no education, but a lot of common sense of how to work and make things happen. And so I noticed that from even at 3 years old, watching all of this stuff. And so then my dad, when he moved us to the home with the big tree and the big yard, and we could play outside, and he would even bring his horses. He had horses, bring them to the yard and let us see them. And he even rented a piece of land, which was on the corner block from our home, where he would keep his horses and he would breed them. And so he got all of these contract jobs, and he worked with all of the rich white people. They liked my dad. And my dad's name was S.J., and then they changed his name to Scott Johnson. Somehow he was, somehow, I don't know, back in the days, they changed your name if it was just an initial, and they changed it to Scott. And so that was his name, and he had a lot of white people that gave him contracts for doing their landscaping. I mean, he could carve their names in the yard, and my dad, this is when I started seeing from that point of watching him work for white people. And at the time, I didn't know anything about contracts, and I've always just looked at him as working for them. I didn't know anything about him working for himself. I didn't know about contracts. I thought they were just his boss, because he would say, "Yes, boss man," and "Yes, sir," and "No, sir," and this and that. And one day, I recall I was a little girl, and I asked my dad, I said, "Why do you say yes, sir, to the white man? Why do you say yes, sir, to him? You guys look like you're the same age." And my dad would tell me, "Well, because you have to give them what they want in order to get what you want." And I was like, "But why do you have to do that?" He said, "Because I have 8 kids to feed, and I have to stay in good faith with the white man, because that's the only way that I will be able to make money." And so to me, I felt like my dad was licking up to people, just to the white people, just to survive, which he did. He had to, because I mean, if he did anything other than that, he wouldn't have the contracts. And so I noticed that growing up. That was when I first sign of me um, feeling, racism, was when I saw how my dad had to really lick butt by saying, "Yes, sir, boss," and "boss man," and all of this stuff. And I was like, "Oh my God, I hope things get better, because when I get grown, I don't want to have to lick up to people like what I saw my dad do to people, you know? I really didn't. And so, but then on the other hand, my dad was doing it for a reason. So he was laughing all the way to the bank. He did it because even when my father passed, one of the people that gave him his first job told me that when my dad moved to the city, he didn't know what a red light and a green light was. And I never knew that. The guy was at the funeral. He flew into my dad's funeral out of respect for, I guess, his father or grandfather, who my dad had worked for. And he said, oh, my dad told me that when your dad moved you guys to the city, he didn't know what a red light from a green light. And my dad told him the red light means stop and the green light means go. And I was like, really? And he said, oh, yeah. He said, I remember your dad came and my dad gave him a chance and this, that, and the other. And your dad, we gave him money when he needed it. And, that's why I came here, because your daddy worked really hard for my dad. And he really worked really hard. And I said, oh, yeah, I know my dad. I saw him working hard like that. And I said, but I want you to know that my dad had money. He always cried broke. So I was able to tell him that when they thought my dad was poor, my dad was doing that to them just to get ahead for us, because he had money when they were thinking he was poor. He had a brand new car. He had 4 or 5 trucks. So at that time was my time to let him know that even though he had to do what he did because of them being white and him being black, he still had everything and more than he needed for his family. He just played along with the game. And he was like, really? I said, oh, yeah, my dad had a lot of common sense. He taught us. I'm an entrepreneur. All of my siblings are entrepreneurs. I said, my dad taught us how to have things. I said, we're not poor at all. That's what I told him. Because for some reason, he thought my dad still, all the way up to the day my dad died. In his mind, my dad was still poor. He was still looking at him as the black man that came to the city that didn't know the red light and the green light. So he felt that the mentality that they saw then was the same mentality that my dad had when he died. And that wasn't so, because after my dad had made his life and made his money and purchased all of his properties, so forth and so on, my dad went to school to get his education. And so he didn't know that either until I was able to tell him. And it was meant for me to tell him on the plane, at the airport, the same man that was at my Caucasian guy that was at my daddy's funeral. I was able to see him in the airport, and this was days later with hundreds of people in the airport. God let me see him to tell him all about what they thought about my dad as a black man was the opposite, because he was smart. And so that was when I really, was able to tell him. But back to realizing the racism was when my dad moved us from that first house that he rented to the second house when I was 3 years old that he purchased. It was an all-white neighborhood. It was an all-white neighborhood. And we moved in. And when we moved in, I think it was like us and maybe another black couple, another black house on that block. Do you know when the black people moved in, all the white people moved out? They did not want to be around the black people. That was when racism really, really set in. I was getting a little older then, 5, 6. And I recall about 7 years old, one couple that hung in there, and they were right next door on our right side of our house. And they had one son, and the son loved playing with us. He would run to the back of the fence and he would ask us for our little jelly sandwiches, and we would give him sandwiches, and he would want our little Spam sandwiches, and he would go, "Can you bring me a sandwich to the fence when my parents leave?" And he was an only child. And right to this day, because we never had racism in our heart, Black people wasn't raised that way. Because in our families, we have all colors. So from slavery days, when the women were raped by the slave masters, so everybody was, mixed. So, and so the little boy, he really liked playing with us. But as soon as he hear his parents coming in, or he'll hear their car pull up, I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. My parents don't want me to play with you. I gotta go. I'll see you when they leave again. And I was wondering, wow, this is really, really something. He really want to play with us, but because we were Black, his parents wouldn't let him play with us. And he was very lonely because, remember, it was 8 of us, so it was a lot of us to play for him to play with, and we protected him. I mean, we really, really protected him. He was our friend when they would leave. And every time his parents would leave, he would run to the back of the fence and call us. And we'd run out and play with him. And as soon as they come, we had to run in the house, and he had to run in the house through the back door. Now, that is really, really something, because kids see no color. And that was heartbreaking to us. And I know it was heartbreaking to him because he was lonely. He wanted somebody to play with. He didn't know anything about color until they taught him that Black was bad, or they didn't want him to play with us because we were Black. I mean, we didn't do anything to anybody. We didn't make our color. Kids are kids. People are people. And so after that, when I saw this racism going on and all the white people moving out of the neighborhood, and and they just moved out. Just every time I looked out the door, somebody was moving out of the neighborhood because of the Black people moving in. I mean, the Black people were trying to better themselves just like they had bettered themselves. I mean, we were trying to better ourselves as well. And so then, so from that point on, my dad continued to work and continued to work. And as we grew up, taught us how to get our own. But before that, even in school, it was only maybe one Caucasian, and that was when I was about to graduate. But the whole entire time of me going to high school, it wasn't any whites because all of the white people had moved out of the neighborhood. And then to top it off, when you would walk home from school, you had racist people, prejudiced people that would throw eggs at you back then. And then you had pervert. Okay, so see, you had the racists, and then you had perverts. White men would ride around. I remember this one white guy riding around in an old station wagon, and he was doing, obscenity stuff, like pulling himself out of his pants and playing with himself in front of kids. And so we had said, okay, we're going to all gang up, and if he pull around that corner next time, we're going to push his car over. Every time we waited on him to come and do that again, we were going to get him. We were waiting, but he would never show up at the time when it would be a lot of us to push his car over in the ditch. But you had that going on. You had the racism, but yet you still had the perverts that still was perverting themselves, these white men with little Black girls. You see what I'm saying? So you had all kinds of mixed stuff going on growing up. And I just recall that. And then later on, moving on up, getting older, you had hard times with jobs. Like if you go and apply for a job, then of course, the Black person, if you go in and it's a white and a Black, you won't get it if you're Black. But many times. And then I saw when my mother taught me to pray, she says, because white people are not God. I don't care who they think they are. They didn't make themselves. God made themselves. So whatever you want, you ask God to give it to you. And when I learned about God, from that day on, the rest was history. I did exactly what my dad taught me to do, is to, have my own and not have to worry about working for the white man, because of the fact that he said his father and father's father had already did that in slavery time. So don't work for them, work for you. And that's how I learned to, survive on my own. But my parents never taught us to be prejudiced. Never taught us to be prejudiced. By no means necessary. And the reason why goes all the way back to where it's in our family, like on my dad's side, he had a very, very light skinned side of the family. Then he had the dark skinned side. Same like my mom. Everybody on her family went from white to black. Same like it is right now. We were rainbow colors, and my mother taught us to always know that God created you just the way he wanted you to be. And no matter if anybody else is prejudiced or racist, just let them be, because in the end, they'll have to pay for that, not you, because you wasn't like they were. You were better than that. And it's coming to be true now. And so those are some of the things that I experienced growing up, not to mention experience with my brothers. Remember, I have 3 black brothers, tons of black nephews and great nephews now. But my brother, I have this one brother that would often get run-ins with the law. So the last time my brother got in trouble, he was incarcerated, and he told me that many of those times they just stuck something on him. They beat him and they stuck something on him. And my brother did time for something that was not his. They plant stuff on you. And so when my brother was incarcerated, I would fly from California to Texas just to see him in prison. And it would really hurt me, because I knew that he was in there for something that he had not done, and they had given him too much time for what they planted on him, which was drugs. It was someone else's, and they planted it on him. And he said he didn't even say who it was, because of the fact that he didn't want to get the other person in trouble. He just went on. Back then, in those days, most African American men, they call it snitching. They would just go ahead and just take the rap. And so my brother, because he had gotten in trouble before, if he didn't take that rap, then he would have possibly gotten more time. So my dad told him, just go ahead and plead guilty, just to save yourself from getting 40 or 50 years for a little piece of drugs that wasn't yours. And that's what he did. And so he's encountered a lot of run-ins with the law. They pick on you if you're black. And so black people been through a lot. This is why Black Lives Matter. It's not the black people that are making this Black Lives Matter event happen now. It's God. Because what goes around comes around, no matter what it is. If black people have been mistreated, then God is tired of it. And it's true that they have. It's true that they have. And just about every white person knows that there's somebody in their family that did not like black people. And for what reason? Did that black person do anything to them? Or did they not like that black person because of the color of their skin? 9 times out of 10, it's because it's the color of their skin. Because black people catered to white people from slavery days all the way up just to make it in life. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair the way it happened from the very beginning. And we were taught to overlook it, but you can never forget it, because Black people can feel the pain of what their ancestors did. And this is what white people fail to understand. That the reason all of this stuff is happening now, because we have interracial couples, we have beautiful mixed babies, white, black, Chinese, brown, Mexican. And so now you're messing with the white people children who are black. This is how God did it for those people that were racist. He mixed it all up so now they can understand that their people don't want them to be racist, just like the black people do not want them to be racist. This is for the racist white people. And so what goes around comes around, and now Black Lives Matters. See, God wanted all lives to matter, but it was only their life that was mattering. And now he's letting everybody know it's time for people to recognize all of the harm that was done to the black people. Now, black people will forgive. A lot of people say, well, I wonder why black people are so bitter and why they're this and that and why those guys be raping and robbing robbing and killing and stealing the black people. Because they're angry, because they feel what had happened to their ancestors. And they know if they get stopped, they're going to jail or get beat or killed or something planted on them, like with my brothers. It's no way. A white person can walk around here all day long. And I'm not prejudiced because I have white friends. And I hope if they hear this, they don't think that I am. I'm just telling them the truth about what happened in my life, not theirs, because they didn't have to live it. But now God is making people acknowledge it and making people like me talk about it because it's true. It is true. You can't just sit back and twiddle your thumb and just let this stuff barg up in you and not tell the truth, because if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be telling the truth. If it happened to them, I would expect a white person to tell me what the black person did to them in slavery. Tell me. Just like what we're telling, tell the truth, because it's real. And now, like I said, the white people that are married to black, or my black people that are married to white, the white person can feel the pain now through their children that are black by the black man. So, and all this stuff is happening because it wasn't right from the very beginning. And before life is over, God wants it to be right. And that's why oftentimes when people pass on or they're in their last days stage of transitioning, they tend to reckon with God and to get their hearts right before they leave. It's the same thing. You can walk around and think you're superior all you want. But the master up above, who made heaven and earth, who made you, me, and everyone and everything that's in it, is not going to let it happen. You are no better than no one else. And we're no better than no one else. But we've always known we were no better because we were taught that. We were taught to love everybody, no matter what color. Like the little boy next door to me when I was growing up. And we loved him. And he was white and we were black. And we would protect him because he was an only child. Black people will protect you if you're their friend. But the ones that retaliate and the ones the cop beat, they're trying to get the jump on the cop because they know the cop going to kill him. They know the cop going to choke him, strangle them, put them in a chokehold, put their knee on their neck. They know it. Plant some drugs on them or steal their drugs. We see it happening every day, but now God let the world see it with George Floyd. And many of the Caucasian people saw it too. They too are tired because if you kill off all the black people, the world will be just full of white people, and the white people will start being miserable because of the fact that they don't see anything other than themselves. And that's because that's not the way God made it. He made it where to be a mixture of people. It's just like flowers in a variety of colors. God is a flower. God is a rainbow. God is love. The creator of the universe, whatever God you think, he's about love. He's not about hate. And every person, white supremacist, white hater, prejudice, even if it's a black racist, everybody have to pay their dues of being not right, of being racist through the eyesight of God. I don't give a damn who it is. And that's my take on racism. And this world will end if it does not get right. You can see it now. Because the new millennials, they don't see no color. All they see is right with God. Right. They want it to be right. All this racist stuff, these new millennial people, they're not taking that. They'll burn down the world. They'll burn down everything. That's what they're doing. Because they are doing it. It could be the ancestors that are coming up. God could be letting the ancestors' vibes work through this universe to tear this town, this world down if it's not right. All this racism stuff has to go. Has to go. It's over. It's over. The superior and thinking because of my skin tone, even for the African American people that think that. I'm just right around the book. I'm not just talking about white people. Even the black people that think they're white and use their color against their own people to mistreat them too, because they're thinking that they're superior because of from slavery, and people made them feel like if their color was better, lighter, this, like color, it was better. Color is not better. Because if you look around, you'll see people white that are poor and people black like Oprah that are rich. If color meant anything, then that poor white person wouldn't be poor. She would be rich like Oprah. So that goes to tell you it's God in control, not color. It's God in control. Your color means zero in God's eyesight because he's the one that made you. So all of that riding off of this and I'm superior because of my color and I can jump in front of you in line and my hair is longer and my eyes are bluer and no, it doesn't matter. That's why God started making contacts. People could be anything they want to be. People can be anything, any color. You find black people that get a lot of money, they start bleaching themselves out like Michael Jackson did to look white. Anybody can be white. But where's your soul? Where's your heart? Where's your mind? Where's your realness? Why are you still walking around and walking around in iniquity with all that stuff from slavery of making, of walking on what the slave masters did to the slaves by killing them to make a better way for the white people, and the white people are still riding off of what the slaves worked for and thinking that they're superior and looking down on the people that did it. No, that's not right. That's not right. Yes, black people should move on and forgive the people, the slave people, and the slave masters. They should. But they can only move on if it's stopped and it was corrected, which is what God is making happen today with Black Lives Matter. When it stops, then black people will probably stop robbing and killing and fighting the cops and retaliating and breaking in white people's houses and robbing white people that's rich, and all of that stuff will stop. It will. But those kids are angry from what they know that happened way back then. Black people never had a chance to not do those kind of things because a lot of them were poor because their slave masters worked like a dog and they didn't have nothing to show for it. Everybody else did, and the black people didn't. So the world is really upset about it because most of the protesters with the George Floyd was a many whites. And some of them have mixed kids and black husbands and some don't. It's just the way God did it because it wasn't right from the beginning with people walking around using their skin color thinking that they're superior over someone else that God created. I'm going to end my show with that, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way it was in my life, my brother's life, and every other black man that I talked to. Oh, before I ended, I was recently talking to a black man about what experiences they had with the white racist cop. Oh, I had 2 or 3 horrific experiences back in the days and even recently. And I was like, really? Wow, what happened? Well, one time I was riding, just riding, and the cops just pulled me over and said, get out. And with guns drawn, with guns, 3 or 4 of them with nothing but guns drawn on this man. He didn't know if he was getting shot down. He saw his life flash right before him. Do you know that's a mental stain on a black man? From a white racist cop? From many of them. 3 of them jumping out the car, pulling on a gun, pulling out their guns, all of them with all their guns. Hold your hands up. If he would have made one crooked move like he was reaching for his ID, they would have shot him. And he was the wrong person. And guess what? No apology. He said all 3 of the white cops just hopped in their cars and took off. Didn't even say, I'm sorry, you're the wrong person. They got his ID, saw it wasn't him, and took off and left him devastated. How horrific is that? That's what black people have been going through. That's why Black Lives Matter. Because not too long ago, I saw a guy swinging a machete at cops. They didn't shoot him, and he was white. If that would have been a black man, all the white people know he would have been dead. Don't try to play like you don't think that he would have. God is tired of people playing stupid. And that's why all this stuff is happening. All these burning down buildings, houses, whatever. These people don't care anymore because they're tired of people trying to act like it's nothing when they know it's horrific. How could anyone walk around that have any type of dignity or class about themselves to keep thinking that this kind of stuff is okay? It's not. Then another incident he was doing a show, so he had boxes and boxes in the car of show products. And he was pulled over on the freeway just because the white cop saw the black man with a lot of boxes thinking it was drugs. See, they already assume, the racist cops already assume you black. I'm going to pull you over. If I see a box in your car, if I see your cell phone in your hand and I think it's a gun, I'm going to pull you over because you black. Pull the man over, the hardworking man, running late for the job, the show. Took out every box of products and put them on the streets. And when he saw it wasn't no drugs, he hopped in his car too. No respect, just like a dog, and just took off. With all this stuff just strolled all over the streets. Thousands of pieces of products. I told him he's lucky he didn't plant any drugs on you, like my brother had planted on him because he was black. These are the experiences that people are able to talk about that many whites know about and didn't give a damn until George Floyd when they saw it on TV. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And then another incident where he was driving and he was looking for a casting job and he had rented a red car. My dad always said never rent red because they see you coming. And he's a very clean-cut, bald-headed, clean-cut black guy. Pulled him over for no reason. Where you going? Just harassing. Oh, I have a casting and I was trying to find the place. Instead of saying, I can help you find the place, let me see your ID. Making the man late, just harassment. Just harassment. Just because he was a black, nice looking man. Trying to hustle a casting. Little things like that. And every black man I talk to, every black man that I know, and I've been in the public with people over 40 years, every black man I know has had some of the same similar encounters. And many of them have children that have died in the hands of the cops, including people that I know sons have. So don't tell me anything about Black lives should not matter. All lives matter, but our lives were not mattering at all. And now it matters. And it's going to continue to matter because the new millennials, these people are not playing anymore. It's over. It's over. Because people are steady having black children every day. The white kids don't have to worry about it. They'll tell you. Another incident, I know someone that wanted to rent some property in an all-white neighborhood, and they didn't want to rent it to the black people, so they sent their white friends in to do it, and they rented it to them. You see? That's what black people are fighting about. It's real. And many, many people already knew this was happening. But God used George Floyd as an example to open up that door so everybody can step out and support Black Lives Matter. I'm going to end my show with that. Please click like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be coming back with more updates on Black Lives Matter. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.